Morning, friends. My name is Avinash Agarwal. I welcome you all to this discussion in which we will be talking about important current affairs related to economics from 2nd May 2024. I hope that I am audible and visible to you. I would request you to please give me a confirmation in the chat box that you can hear me. Urban companies. Right. So let us start with our discussion. Thank you, Rakesh, for joining in. Thank you, Rashmi, for joining in. So as always, I request everybody who has joined the live stream to please just type something in the chat box. I would like to acknowledge your presence. I would just like to make sure that the connection that is there between you and me as an educator, you as a student, we are able to develop that connection. It is very important for me because it helps me in being able to do my job well, right? So that's why I'm requesting again that please be kind enough to, just make your presence felt. So good morning, Ashad. Good morning, Rashmi. Good morning, Rakesh and Basumatri. Hi. Thank you for joining in, guys. So let us start. I hope that you have seen previous discussion on 1st May. So today what we are going to do is that we are going to talk about three very important topics that we typically talk about in almost any theory class in economics: inequality, inflation, and industrial policy. Okay. These are very obvious topics, very critical topics, very important topics in any theoretical discussion on Indian economics. And what we will be able to do now is that we'll be able to contextualize these topics in the current affairs domain, in the sense that we'll be able to see what's happening with these topics right now, just as we speak, which is exactly what the purpose of these sessions is. That we want to underpin everything that we study in our classes at Ecoholics, whether it is our Indian Economic Service batch or Indian IES batch or optional batch or RBI batch or absolutely any batch that we offer. So whatever we study from a theoretical point of view, we just want to do the current affairs underpinning of it. We already do this. Like for instance, we regularly come out with our weekly and monthly magazines, which you can easily access through Ecoholics app. So what we're trying to do is that we're trying to contextualize every theoretical aspect that we discuss in current affairs. So let's see. Okay, let's start. So the first topic, as you can see, is related to redistribution. So there is a lot of discussion happening in India regarding redistribution of wealth, regarding inequality. So to just give you a very quick brief background in a very non-political manner. So the Congress party came up with certain ideas in its manifesto regarding redistribution of wealth, regarding economic justice, regarding reducing inequality, economic inequality in the country. And there started a lot of heated debate around this concept, right? Inheritance tax got spoken about, etc., etc., right? So this basically gives us a perfect, perfect opportunity to talk about inequality, right? So let's talk about inequality. Okay. So of course, theoretically speaking, redistribution is something that we always want to do, right? Given the fact that we are collecting taxes from the rich, and given the fact that we are providing subsidy to the poorer section of the societies, that basically means that we are doing redistribution. Every government is doing it. Even the present government is doing it. They collect personal income tax, corporate income tax, correct? They collect all of that, and they give PM Kisan, they give free food, they give free education, they give a lot of free healthcare, right? So basically you are collecting from those who can pay, and you are helping those who need help. This is typically how redistribution would work. But despite this kind of effort ongoing, right, when we look at the scale of inequality in terms of how much wealth does top 10% of the population hold in that country. So South Africa is one of the most unequal countries in the world, where 10% of the population is owning 85% plus of country's wealth, followed by Brazil, followed by US, followed by India, right? So we are one of the most unequal countries in the world as per this graphic, right? And you will see this kind of a statement coming in from a variety of different sources as well. that India is one of the most unequal countries in the world, which also happens to be a democracy, right? So we are not alone out there, but we are definitely out there. Okay. So what is redistribution of wealth? Like I just explained to you, that what we typically do is that we collect taxes, right, and we run welfare measures. Okay. So these welfare measures, measures, they help in pulling a variety of boats up. Okay. For instance, India, when we became independent, we introduced land reforms. Why did we introduce land reforms? So if you looked at 1947 land holding picture, it was one of the most unequal picture, or it was a picture of inequality in asset ownership, that the ownership of land was concentrated in very few hands, and there were very many tillers who were doing all the hard work, who were doing all the effort, but they were not really the owners of the land. They were not really the chief beneficiaries of their own hard work, which is exactly why we initiated the process of land reforms. Of course, it's another story and another discussion that India did not successfully implement the land reforms the way we wanted to really implement, or what our noble intention was. Our execution lagged behind. So we'll not get into that right now, right? But we as a government, we try to take a variety of steps which I just explained to sort of reduce income inequality or economic inequality, right? Now the point is that inequality is a problem in a variety of countries. So there is a study which has been done by OECD, that is Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development. So quick homework for you, if you are a new learner, you will have to comment after this video or in this video, who are the members of OECD countries, right? So you just need to find out, just need to do one Wikipedia, one Google, and you'll be able to understand the background of OECD. So Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development is basically a group of some of the most wealthiest countries in the world, right? So typically what you refer to as the Western world is a part of this OECD. This is just a hint for you. So a study which has been done by OECD, it has revealed that wealthiest 10% of the households, they hold 52% of total wealth, while the least 60%, they hold just 12% across 38 member countries. So OECD did this study within their group of countries. And in some of the most advanced countries, we are having this problem, right? That bottom 60% or least wealthy 60%, they just hold 12% of the country's wealth. And you may have heard of this very famous economist's name, Thomas Piketty. He often talks about greater redistribution of wealth, just the way probably your Amartya Sen or a John Ray will talk about from an Indian point of view, right? Now, why is this a hot topic? So this topic was there in Congress's election manifesto. They said that we want to do a socio-economic caste census, and that we want to strengthen affirmative action program. Affirmative action program is the kind of program that we are running for the upliftment of scheduled castes, scheduled tribes and OBCs in India, where you are typically providing reservation, where you are typically providing access and opportunity where it was earlier getting denied in a systematic manner, right? So that is the basic idea of affirmative action. Okay. And a variety of leaders have spoken about greater redistribution of wealth. For example, Rahul Gandhi, he spoke about historic assignment to distribute wealth of India, jobs and other welfare schemes. Okay. Sam Pitroda, who is one of the advisors of the Congress party, spoke about inheritance tax. So inheritance tax, Sam Pitroda said that it exists in US, and this kind of an inheritance tax should exist in India. To just put everything in context, if you remember, and I'm not so much of a social media guy, and I am not so much of a meme guy, right? But recently what happened is that Mr. Narayan Murthy, he had his grandson, and he gifted certain shares to his grandson, right? I mean, typically nobody should look twice about it or talk twice about it, right? But that became a big talking point, right? That how come a child, of course, best wishes to the child, how come a child suddenly finds himself to be, let us say, a millionaire or a billionaire on day zero without having to do anything? And there was a lot of discussion around it. There was a lot of debate around it. Now, I'm not getting into somebody's personal affairs, but what I'm trying to say over here is that there was this idea that such kind of inheritances, right, how do they kind of, get looked upon today in India? That is the basic debate that, we are trying to get into over here, right? Now, should inheritance tax be there or not be there? I'm not passing any judgment on this today, right? But this is the discussion that's happening right now. So obviously redistribution is not a new concept, right? It is very much in it is very much in play, right? So those who are earning more, they pay higher taxes, right? And through those taxes, we are able to provide welfare, subsidies, and direct cash transfers, etc. to others, right? So India used to have estate duty in the past, wealth tax in the past, gift tax in the past, but most of these taxes were paper taxes. What are paper taxes? Though these taxes weren't really contributing a lot of revenue, right? They were taxes merely on paper. There was hardly any revenue that was getting collected through these taxes, a lot of these taxes, right? So we got rid of these paper taxes, because these paper taxes, A, don't help you, and B, it tarnishes your image that you are troubling the rich or you are going after the rich and so on and so forth, right? So the idea is that now coming to the key question, that does India need more redistribution? So definitely the wealth gap has widened in India. Now again, bringing this in the perspective of your exam, if you pick up, let us say, UPSC examination papers conducted by UPSC, whether it is IES General GS 3, that is General Studies 3, or whether you pick up Economics Optional Paper 2, or you pick up Indian Economic Service papers, right? You will see that consistently almost every second, third year, they have asked, they as in UPSC has asked, consistently they have asked that explain why inequality in India has increased after the implementation of liberalization, privatization and globalization reforms. Now you know that UPSC is one of the most respected bodies, and if they are asking a question, probably that question is worth asking, right? So that is why this is a discussion worth having, right? That the wealth gap has definitely widened in India, right? And what do we do about it, right? So the World Inequality Lab says that the richest 1% of Indians, they now own as much as 40% of country's wealth, right? And this gap is not going to close on its own, and we will probably need super tax on billionaires and millionaires, right? And probably the wealth of the rich needs to be taxed more, right? So this is basically one of the ways of looking at things. Of course, there is no one clear answer, and there is critical analysis of every idea. So even this idea of redistribution is subjected to critical analysis, right? Now, if you try to redistribute wealth too much, if you try to, let us say, go after the rich too much, then you basically smother innovation, you can hit productivity, right? Because see boss, I am working hard. Why will I work hard? For my own prosperity, right? Not for everybody else's prosperity. Of course, I am a nice person, so I want to lift all boats. I want to do something for my country and society. But at the end of the day, everybody has certain hedonistic tendencies. They would like to do something for themselves as well, right? So the moment you speak too heavily about redistribution, right, that is the point you start probably hurting initiative. You start probably hurting innovation and so on and so forth, right? Now, inequality is inevitable in a growing economy, because if I am the factory owner, right, then I am going to earn a profit, and that profit is going to remain mine, right? So all the margin that I earn is going to be mine. Machines are going to work for me. All 100 employees are going to work for me. So each employee will take home only what they are, let us say, contributing to the production process. But I will be able to take home the surplus from everybody else's labor, so to speak, right? So definitely inequality is going to be there. Holders of capital, they are going to reap maximum benefit, right? But these wealth creators, they contribute to economic prosperity. They pay taxes. They create jobs. Those jobs create incomes. Those incomes pull people out of poverty. It helps increase consumption. It helps increase demand. It helps everybody. So these wealth creators aren't really the problem, right? But of course, inequality is something that we need to be able to tackle, right? So, for instance, Zimbabwe, Venezuela, they tried large-scale redistribution and failed, right? India at one point of time used to have a socialistic way of approaching everything. Like for instance, we used to have extremely high income tax rate, extremely high corporate tax rates, right? We used to have a variety of these taxes. But then eventually we realized that it doesn't work. We realized that, boss, we need to rationalize these taxes. Because when you try to collect too much of an income tax or too much of a corporate tax, or when you try to go too heavily after the rich, they will start concealing their income, they will start hiding their income, right? They will start generating a lot of black income and so on and so forth. So we realized as a country that, boss, this is not going to work, and therefore after liberalization, privatization and globalization reforms were introduced, we started rationalizing our tax rates. So I've still not given any straightforward answer to you. The straightforward answer is probably coming out of, let us say, the kind of ideas that, let us say, Raghuram Rajan gives. So when these ideas were being discussed, he made a very important statement. He said that rather than trying to pull the rich down, focus your energies upon, you know, pulling up those who are at the bottom of the pyramid. So that's the basic ideology that you need to keep in mind. To further take from Dr. Rajan's ideas, a very long back, 10 years ago at least, he had mentioned that make sure that every new kid that is born in India is starting his or her race from the same starting line. That means that when it comes to health, education, skill development, nutrition, guidance, mentorship, information, right? Access to knowledge, access to opportunities. Make sure that every kid is starting from the same starting line. If we do this much, then it should be sufficient to be able to at least, you know, remedy the situation a little bit. Create good quality jobs, high quality jobs. Try to pull the surplus labor out of agriculture. Try to improve upon the productivity of people working in the informal sector, people working in the agriculture sector. Try to provide irrigation so that they can undertake multiple cropping. Those who are doing only one crop can do multiple cropping. Try to give a booster to allied activities so that you can have diversified sources of income. Try to penetrate health insurance and a variety of other insurances so that if people come across accidents in life, right, then they are able to kind of pull themselves up very, very quickly, right? So if you really want to reduce inequality, it's not just income inequality, but it's also skill inequality, opportunities inequality, access inequality, regional inequality, and a variety of other things need to be worked upon. So there is no magic bullet over here. Like for instance, it was mentioned in the Congress Party's manifesto that we will provide 1 lakh rupees direct cash transfer to every lady, every main lady or eldest lady in the BPL families. Fine, go ahead and do that, no problem. But that is not going to solve anybody's problem. We started giving 6,000 rupees to farmers. Did that solve farmers' problem? Even if we let us start giving 60,000 rupees to farmers, it's not going to solve farmers' problem. We need to be able to, you know, teach people how to do fishing and not provide fish to them is a very old Chinese adage. So that's basic about this particular topic. I'll move ahead, right? Another very important topic that we typically, so are you all there with me? Are you all understanding? If you all are there with me and if you all are understanding, please just type yes, guys, everybody, right? So that you know, we are all aligned, that everybody's understanding and stuff like that. If there is any question, that please feel free to ask. I would again like to remind you all that all these notes and everything that Ecoholics does from a current affairs point of view, etc., can be very easily accessed from our apps. If you have not already downloaded the same, just keep that in mind. Okay, moving ahead, just type yes, everybody, very quickly so that I can move ahead. Now I want to talk about how heat wave and prices are linked with each other in India, right? So there has been a plethora of articles on heat waves, right? India is amidst a very bad spell of heat waves. A lot of many parts of our country are experiencing very bad heat waves, right? And how does that sort of interact with prices and productivity, right, and output is something that I would like to explore, because this heat wave phenomena is not going to go away, right? As we move ahead, as climate change effect starts to exacerbate, we will see more of these things, right? So we need to be able to clearly understand what's happening. So I've introduced some glossary terms over here for those who are not aware of them. For instance, Kharif crop, Rabi crop, food inflation, labor productivity, as well as informal sector. So just have a look at it. I will be using these terms in my discussion now. Going ahead, I'll explain it to you, right? I've left it in the document for you so that you can download it and read it, friends, right? So heat waves is bringing about a spike in food inflation. It is bringing about an increase in food prices across our country, right? So vegetables, mangoes, etc., their prices are going up quite a bit. So that's what I'm going to talk about right now. So this is one of the graphs that I came across. I thought I'll share it with you. You can see that retail food inflation, which was at a high of 8.5%. So what are the commodities that is fueling this kind of inflation, right? So tomato, onion, potato, they are ruling in high double digits, my friends, right? So what's a heat wave and how bad is it? So eastern, central and southern states, they have been witnessing heat waves. So there is this concept called as CHZ, core heat wave zone, right? So typically, this is again, I'm bringing my outside knowledge into this discussion, right? So core heat wave zone typically is your North India, Northwest India, some parts of East India, right? So there is a traditional core heat wave zone, right? But now in this year, what has been witnessed is that we have witnessed heat waves outside of the traditionally defined heat wave zone, meaning that areas that never experienced heat waves are also experiencing heat waves. That is problem number one. And problem number two is that typically, climatologically speaking, heat waves are supposed to last for like 3 to 5 days. You can check it out, right? But now in India, what we are seeing is that heat waves are lasting for 12 to 14 days, right? So what these are anomalous patterns which are recurring way too more frequently, right? So probably they are not anomalous anymore. Probably this is the new normal, right? So this is the new normal. And how do you define heat wave? So it is typically defined in terms of, you know, temperature, right? Like for instance, if you are in a coastal area and the temperature is beyond 37 degrees, it will be a heat wave. If let us say the current existing temperature is, let us say, 4.5 degrees more than what it should be, right? That the deviation is more than 4.5 degrees plus 4.5 degrees, then that basically merits classification as a heat wave, right? So there is a variety of definitions you can go into it, but from an economic standpoint, you don't need to go too much into the geography of it, right? Now, will this hit crops and what will happen to food prices? So wheat is unlikely to be impacted, right? Oil seeds and pulses are also unlikely to be impacted. The upcoming kharif crop is also unlikely to be impacted. But what is likely to be impacted is one of the most dangerous commodities, that is fruits and vegetables. You know that fruits and vegetables prices are the most volatile prices in India, right? They are the ones that have the tendency to spike the most often, right? And we are going to have a negative impact on their production, their storage, and their transportation. So these are short duration vegetables. They're susceptible to heat and they're very volatile, friends, right? For instance, consumer vegetable prices, they were 28% higher year on year already in March. So just imagine what can happen once the data or once the reading for April comes out, right? So tomato prices, they were 62% higher, right? And the idea is that in the summer seasons, right, you see cooler growing regions tomato come into the market, and that kind of a supply is getting hit in a very bad way, right? Apart from that, it has already impacted the production of mangoes, right? It has the potential, heat wave has the potential to reduce milk output. For instance, if you look at the 2022 heat wave, right, so it reduced the milk output or the milk yield by 15%, right? So even while your supplies are falling, typically as temperatures rise, your requirement or your demand for milk increases, right? So there is a demand supply mismatch that gets created that needs to be managed, right? Apart from that, your egg production also takes a hit because your poultry birds mortality rate increases because of severe heat, right? There is intense water crisis in a variety of regions, like for instance, Karnataka, Maharashtra, Rajasthan, okay? And you need to take certain measures to be able to, you know, so a lot of efforts and resources get diverted in these directions. Heat stress, it also lowers labor productivity, right? Especially in the informal sector where you would not have, let us say, mitigating mechanisms so easily and so readily available. International Labour Organization says that India will lose 5.8% of its annual working hours by 2030 due to heat stress, and that's about 34 million full-time jobs. So these are the kind of, indicators that you need to keep in mind. So everything that is happening, like for instance, heat wave, how is it interacting with economic variables? That is the whole idea that I wanted to bring to you, right? And I have brought it primarily through inflation, but obviously it is also going to have an impact upon productivity and a lot of other sectors as well, right? So this is another thing done. Another very important topic that we talk about is industrial policy, right? We like to talk about our industrial policy and see how it has performed, right? We like to speak, and probably we also like to know what is the best industrial policy in the world so that we can have a sense, or let us say what a China is doing or what a USA is doing in terms of their industrial policy. So that kind of awareness should always be there with us. Now there is this article which has appeared, which gives us a fantastic sense of what is happening primarily in China in terms of their industrial policy and what we can kind of learn from them maybe, or what we can kind of, you know, take from their experience. So there are certain words that I wanted to introduce to you, such as gross fixed capital formation, bubble, as well as deflation, right? So I'll introduce these terms as we discuss this article, right? Now there are two superpowers in the world right now, US and China, right? And both these countries are investing heavily towards their industrial objectives, goals. They have a well-designed, from their point of view, a well-designed industrial policy in place, and they are putting serious amount of cash in making that industrial policy successful. And that is what I am going to discuss with you, right? So for instance, China was already spending 1.7% of their staggeringly large GDP, right, on industry policy related projects. Now this is an old number. 1.7% of their staggeringly large GDP was being spent on industrial policy projects. So they may be building infrastructure, they may be building ecosystem, they may be building R&D hubs, they may be building supporting and ancillary services related infrastructure, whatever. They may be upgrading electricity, they may be upgrading effluent treatment, they may be upgrading quality testing, they may be upgrading port infrastructure. So they were basically spending a huge amount of money on industrial policy related projects, and that spending has only increased. This is, like I said, an old number, right? Now recently in January, right, the government did kind of expanded its goal, and it said that we want to focus on photonic computing, on brain computer interfaces, on nuclear fusion. These are cutting edge से भी आगे cutting edge technology. These are frontier technology से भी आगे वाला frontier technology. Photonic computing, brain computer interfaces, nuclear fusion. If nuclear fusion actually becomes successful, to just give you a sense, right? So it will give you a permanent source of energy. You can have unlimited energy happening, provided you are able to control this chemical reaction, which is, it's easier. Nuclear reaction is easier said than done. Brain computer interfaces is what Elon Musk is talking a lot about, that my brain synapses, my neurons, etc. should directly be able to communicate with the computer, and I don't even need to move my limbs. So it will be very helpful for those who have certain disabilities, right? But it can have a plethora of other applications as well, right? Photonic computing, it will probably free up computing from the limitations of a physical semiconductor chip, because we are making as small chips as possible, right, as humanly possible, right, or as physics के हिसाब से भी possible. What is the next frontier? How do you go beyond these chips? That is photonic computing for you, right? So these are the kind of technologies that China wants to focus upon, right? They have said that, boss, they have told their R&D institutions that spend money on scientists who are under 35 years of age. Spend bulk of your money on younger scientists, right? USA is not far behind. They have passed 3 bills in 21-22 with industrial policy aims, and the cumulative investment is $2.4 trillion on these 3 bills. So one of my professors at IIM Calcutta, Professor Partha Pratim Pal, he had written a fantastic article in, if I'm not wrong, the Hindu Business Line, which actually talks about this idea that how, let us say, a country like USA, it preaches free market principles, right? But in its own house, it is anything but free market, because the government is heavily subsidizing, the government is actively involved, the government is totally intervening in the industrial development of USA going ahead, right? So it's a very fantastic article that Professor Partha Pratim Pal had written, right? Apart from that, Chinese leaders, they seem to be omniscient in the sense that they know it beforehand that which industries are important, right? So for instance, China has prioritized battery cells, electric cars, wind turbines, solar panels. Now only future will tell whether these industries were the right ones to prioritize or not. But from the looks of it, it seems that yes, these are your sustainability related industries and probably important ones, right? USA on its own is focusing on developing its infrastructure, redeveloping its infrastructure, modernizing its infrastructure, and on making semiconductor chips, right? So US is working very closely with Intel, right, with IBM, right, and they are trying to catch up on this lost ground so far as semiconductor chips is concerned. Okay, now there is a risk that when US is spending such a huge amount of money, let us say, towards upgradation of infrastructure, industrialization, and so on, that will they end up overstimulating their economy, right? Because you understand, right, that government spending creates a lot of demand, right, and that demand can have a multiplier effect. Okay, so will it overstimulate, overheat up the economy? Will it cause inflation, right? Will that be the reason for interest rates to remain high in the US and in other parts of the world for a longish period of time. We don't know, but that is a possibility. What we are trying to say is that when you go down the rabbit hole of investing too heavily upon your industrial policy goals, you achieve good things, but there are also downsides. So the downsides is what I am just trying to highlight in front of you. Like for instance, Beijing, right? They built out industries, they built out infrastructure like crazy, right? Now what has happened to their public debt? So they have ended up creating a huge bubble. They have ended up creating corporations, and they have ended up creating balance sheets which are absolutely bankrupt, right? But there are positives too. Like for instance, if you as an exam student, if you are looking at Beijing's industrial policy, so they have impressive dividends. Like for example, their spending on science and technology was 2.8%, right? Out of 64 critical technologies, China has lead in about 53 as per Economist or as per the Australian Policy Institute, right? So if they are having lead in 50 plus critical technologies, that basically means that the future supply chain is definitely going to go through China. It's not going to, you are not going to be able to extract China out of that value chain given the kind of lead that they already have. 5G, 6G, drones, radar, robotics, they are having a lead in all of these things. If you look at the intellectual property rights index or something related to patents or these kinds of indices which are coming out of WIPO, that is World Intellectual Property Organization. So you typically expect a country such as China to be on the 60th rank, but they are on the 12th rank, right? So that's the basic idea, that China is investing too heavily and is doing too well for itself, right? Yeah, they have their own failures. Like for instance, they have not been able to build out a gigantic chip manufacturer all of their own. Like for instance, there is this Taiwan semiconductor manufacturing company TSMC. China doesn't have a parallel or an equivalent company, simply because US has ensured that China doesn't get that kind of technology. No country cooperates with China in this sense. The transfer of technology is nearly impossible, which is why China doesn't have it. But yeah, they don't have a chip manufacturing facility such as a TSMC, right? But you know that they can do anything with Taiwan that they decide, the day they decide that they want to do something about it, right? China has kept its investment as a proportion of GDP at a very high level of 40%. The gross capital formation in China is still around 43.3% of GDP, which is too high, right? I mean, if you look at the OECD countries, it is around 23%. If you look at India, it is nowhere around 43%, right? So you can see that they are investing too heavily. There are issues, like I said, that there is a housing bubble, that the local government is impoverished, right? That there are a lot of bankruptcies, right? There is definitely a debt problem in China. Definitely there is a debt problem in China. There is a definite slowdown that is happening in China, right? But they are not relenting so far as their industrial policy goals are concerned. Like for instance, banks have been directed to lend to high profile manufacturing projects, right? So there should be no dearth of finance going towards these projects, right? And it isn't as if that we haven't seen this earlier from China. We have seen this kind of aggressive approach by the government earlier too. Like for instance, in 2001, when China acceded to the WTO, right, and they complied with the rules and became a member of WTO, right? So they started the dumping game. They subsidized their industries heavily, and those industries mass produced cheap products which were then dumped into other industries, which hurt the domestic industries in other countries, right? So it isn't as if that this kind of an aggressive involvement in industrial development is for the first time. This kind of an aggressive involvement in being world leader and being integrated in the supply chain is the first time. We have seen this happen earlier too. But the difference is that the Western countries are far more alert, aggressive, and you may say hostile to let us say a China like country today. If you look at what is happening in US, like for instance, JP Morgan says that just the way manufacturing jobs went down in that country, the opioid use or the drug use shot up in that country. That's chilling, right? In the sense that if people don't have jobs, and if there is desolation, if there is isolation, if there are all these problems, then a variety of societal issues, societal ills can rear their ugly head. And US is not going to just sit back and allow China, or not just US, or any, for that matter, any European country too, right? So the political climate in the developed world, it is not going to allow China to export its way out of trouble, right? And there is a serious threat that they may create overcapacity in these future focused industries. What about our industrial policy? It seems to be too little, too late, right? Like for instance, we are providing subsidy scheme for textiles or white goods, etc. rather than, and we have still not been able to sign free trade agreement with, let us say, a European Union or with UK. I mean, it's on the line, it is on the anvil, but it is something which could have been done 5 or 10 years ago, but it has not been done. It is that this is what has been mentioned in this article, and I kind of resonate with this view that we should have signed these relevant deals a long time ago, right? But be that as it may, right? Imports, when you look at India's imports from China, they were $70.3 billion. It has increased to $101.75 billion. This is after the implementation of Atmanirbhar Bharat, right? So ultimately, the IMF says that well-designed policies, they improve business environment, making making the business environment good for everyone, and they are not so much about the targeted government interventions, right, which can easily be misallocated. So that's the basic conclusion, that try to improve them from at least from an Indian standpoint. If I were to identify my takeaways, so definitely increase R&D spending, sure. Create the ecosystem, sure. Create the necessary supporting in infrastructural improve the infrastructural availability, clean up your processes, ease of doing business, etc. Although the ranking is no longer relevant, but whatever we are doing from an ease of doing business point of view, we need to focus upon all of these things. We need to focus upon futuristic industries, because we have already lost the manufacturing race a number of times in the past. So at least when we talking about industrial revolution 4.0, 5.0, at least let us try to gear up our manpower with the requisite skills, with the requisite access to tools, techniques, resources, etc. So that when it comes to industrial revolution 4.0 and 5.0, we are not lagging behind way back, because we have our own requirements to create jobs, etc. So this is my submission for today, folks. I hope that you all enjoyed this. Do consider liking and sharing our content, and we'll meet you again tomorrow. Thank you so much. All the very best, and Jai Hind to all of you guys. Thank you.